Do others recognize your leadership voice? Not necessarily talking about the sound, the way you speak, your voice, your tone. All of those things are important. But would others recognize the sound of your voice in something you wrote? Listening to a podcast, and I'm quoting another person, a colleague or customer sharing an anecdote of somebody else, and that person was you. Would others recognize your voice, your message, your purpose, your values, what you stand for? The reason I ask is your leadership voice, in my view, has never been more important this century than probably now. I've spent half an hour this morning watching a debate on YouTube, Jubilee Media, popular with Gen Z. They get one person debating topics with 20 people. I watched that just to really gauge what issues are on people's minds, different points of view with a contrarian, because that helps me in the work that I do to understand people's fears, especially in the work environment, business landscape, because what I do is I help people find courage, make courage a habit, define their leadership purpose, change from fear-based thinking to courage-based thinking. Sounds complex, but it's actually simpler than many people realize. It's really a point, because often we overcomplicate things. Coming back to Jubilee Media, is sound of voice is getting harder in noise. Two people constantly talking over each other. Cadence, fact, 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 fact. Not really to support an argument, fact more why the other person was wrong. See, a leadership voice, in my view, enables others to listen, to share their view, ideas, and that between maybe you and the other person, team, whoever, could be your customers, there's a different way. There's tension, but it's good tension. There's conflict, but it's good conflict. It's the tension that brings out what's not being said. It's the tension that enables a psychologically brave discussion about a key issue or problem, or why people think a certain way on an issue and where to find common ground. And the conflict is really the back and forth. Why do I say this about your leadership voice? Because as a leader, your message, what you believe, your mission, vision, values are what people will either buy into, decide not for them, or need to ruminate and then understand how they can buy into it more and create that purposeful project outcomes, impact through a sense of greater belonging. And the reason why I say your leadership voice has never been more important this century, because that sense of belonging and the ability to listen to another point of view is a dying art. And it's one thing I believe we need to have more of. Now, if you've been following me for some time, you'll know that I was in a coma 20 years ago. 2 comas in a month, 20 years ago. And I lived through my worst fear, which was a tracheotomy. And this is my voice from my vocal cords, because the tracheotomy damaged my vocal. But it did more than that. It required me to fight to get my voice back, because I spoke this croaky voice for over a year until I learned to speak to my diaphragm. But the person I was before the coma and the tracheotomy was a very different person from the one speaking to the voice. Not yet a courageous leader, part-time courage, which I'll cover in another video. But I had to fight to get my voice back. And even though I sounded very different, it was the things I said, the way I said something, my point of view, is that people found the real me, even though my voice was like this. As a leader, is that what you are doing now in this world of AI, separating fact from truth? Is it you speaking, or is it you using AI to create a video for you, social media posts, engaging, comment? How do people understand the real you and what you stand for? Now, I love learning from history, because I believe it tells us what we can learn from the past and then make things better in the present and the future. Now, in business, I remember my first job, full-time job after leaving university, was a team manager in a call centre. It was international directory inquiries. People needing international phone numbers. People need international phone numbers anymore when we all connect through WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Signal, different things. And I remember other people in the call centre would want to bring back the days of the telephone directory. Some would say bring back the books because they would search for numbers in a database. And the database was phone numbers being actively updated every single day. So it was accurate, gave you the point of information, and it was providing a speedy and more reliable service to customers. But they wanted to bring back the books because when the database went down or there was a problem, there was a very difficult workaround. Bringing back the books was really a safe space. But then I thought about what was it about the books, and what it was a way of knowing that it was done in a particular methodical way, finding somebody's name, their address, maybe their hometown. There was a bit of a story being told by looking for somebody in the telephone book versus on a database. And that's where I come back to why I love learning from history, because of all the stories. Now, the history, particular culture, a certain section of society. As a proud gay man, I'm very much aware of the history of Stonewall, the first Mardi Gras, and people who fought for rights. But I like the history of families, what grandparents did, how they lived, and how when family members lived in another country, they moved over there. Like myself, moved to Australia in 2000, cousins who live in America. What life was like for them when they first moved there, because it was pioneering leadership, doing something differently, building a community and finding a new way of doing something and being successful. Because that's why coming back to why leadership message and your voice is so important right now. Because through all of this turmoil, the constant thing is humans and change, wanting to feel safe, wanting to feel successful, wanting a level of security and meaning. That has never changed. Now, going back to my first job, the call centres meant that a lot of high street shops were closed. People wouldn't need to go to the telephone shop to pay off their bill. They could do it online, send a check. So the early stages of phone and internet banking. And then call centres started being offshored and then they'd be shut down because we didn't need it so much because of apps, bots, doing business online. Humans have been the one impacted at every single stage. App developers in 2005 are very different from 2025, very different from 2020. If you create an app using AI in a few days' time, maybe, I don't know, it's not my area of expertise, probably. But the leadership voice, why you're doing something, how does that connect to other people? And it really brings me on to a crucial point one, which I say consistently, which is around your purpose, rooted in your core values. Going back to the YouTube video I watched this morning, very rarely was there common ground being found. But once you started listening to a few people, you started to understand the purpose. Some people wanted a better future, solve some complex problems, but maybe the political system in America right now, which I'm not going to go into politics too much, is not set up for that. But how does that change? If you went into your office on a Monday morning, would you want your team to feel happy, looking forward to the week, or dreading the week? Would you like them to consider Friday afternoons as, I'm really looking forward to the weekend, I enjoyed the week, or thank goodness it's the weekend, 2 days away from this place? Now, a big difference between how they spend between Monday morning, Friday afternoon, is the culture, leadership, message, what's being said. Now, I mentioned history earlier and loving history because our minds are full of stories and experiences. We, as human beings, avoid anything perilous, comfortable, where it's going to be stressful, and when things are bad at work, may find another job at a better environment. But when your leadership voice is the one thing that carries through, starts to change some of the behaviours. It is that people can have different ways of solving a problem, an idea, maybe for innovation, something that's never been done. They want to improve a process and they're empowered. Your leadership message is one of, it's okay to make a mistake, get something wrong, learn from it, fix mistakes, fix problems. You'll probably see more calculated risk taking than avoiding risks. Complacency, overgrowth. Obsolescence is the danger of complacency, of avoiding calculated risk taking, of avoiding people sharing ideas or thoughts, of people hating the time between Monday morning and Friday afternoon. Comfortable pause here for me. As a speaker, so I tend to speak more slowly when I'm recording. It's a habit I've formed as a speaker. My tone will get quicker, then it will slow down. But the pause. How would you really feel when that affected your business, or customers didn't want to do with you anymore because of how staff are being treated? Whereas the difference of when I walk into a business, sure, I love seeing how the staff feel. If I go to the Woolies up the road, the Woolwich supermarket in Australia, I tend to prefer going to the counter than the checkout because, to be honest, working from home, running a business, I get that human interaction and it's nice to have a smile. They can pack quicker than I can. But I notice how people are happy to work there. The conversations that are starting. Wow. All one thing from a leadership voice and why it's important. Another reason why your leadership voice is important and others can understand it is if you don't share it, what messages are your team, customers, potential customers listening to? Who is basically taking your business away from you or taking your top talent to work for them? How much is it costing you not to be sharing your leadership voice? Are you comfortable missing out on opportunities because you didn't share your leadership voice? I would expect the answer is no to both questions. If you're in business, you run a corporation or you're a leader in a corporation, even a government department, I would expect the answer would be no. But as I say, I like people to disagree. And that's okay to disagree. It's how we disagree and how we engage with each other. I'm going to share a bit of a story. It's actually about a story I'm writing. I finished the second draft of my first novel. What's the first novel? My first novel yesterday. 88,000 words, almost 90,000 words. And I've done that in a month. I talk to my phone when I'm going to the gym, talk back. 3,000 words, that's a chapter. So you think how quickly you can get through a chapter. Sometimes I might just be on my phone for an hour, 2 chapters, 6,000 words, then I craft that editing. That's how I tend to write. And then I'll polish it in the third draft. Yet, I've seen videos about plots, foreshadowing, how you do the 3-act structure, adding tension, suspense, all the things to improve my craft as a writer. I found on videos and listened to experts and followed advice of my book coach and editor, Christine Matheson-Green. But I've also seen all of this noise. And this is really my final point about the noise versus sound. Like the noise or writer's block, or these are the things you need to do, 10 mistakes, how you can get started. All of these common problems, which really I didn't have. I've already published my first book, I have my style of writing, but I've also found a way to really craft my voice. And I use AI to do a lot of the editing. AI is great at turning your perfect writing into something average. Honestly, it takes beautiful prose, funny text into something more like a reference book and a textbook rather than a novel you'll love reading. Because the noise, what is it you don't want to be listening to? What is it that ideally your team or customers really, is it conducive to them? And it could start with the sound of your voice, your leadership voice, but also their voice, their message, things that they've shared, really just growing that community. And not necessarily that community as in a village or a sports club, but really that business community, that professional community, coming back to what I've mentioned earlier, grounded in common values and that purpose. I didn't know what I was going to say before I started recording. I tend to like this